It happened over eggs and coffee, sunlight streaming through the windows of a lakeside bistro, and everyone pretending to enjoy each other. The table was full. My mom, my dad, my younger sister Claire, and my Uncle Mark with his always too loud laugh. I had come because it was Mom's birthday, and despite everything, part of me still wanted to believe I belonged. The server had just poured the second round of coffee when my mom looked straight at me and said, "We are just being nice, including you. Don't think you matter." There was a pause. Then Mark chuckled like someone had delivered a perfect punchline. Claire didn't look up from her phone. My dad kept slicing into his pancakes as if someone had commented on the weather. I didn't say anything. I took a slow sip of coffee and nodded. That was all. No one stopped me when I stood up. No one asked where I was going. I left the table, quietly walked through the front doors and out into the overly bright morning. I unlocked my car, slid inside, and sat with my hands on the wheel for a moment, letting the sting sink in. That moment would have faded like so many others if it wasn't for the way she said it. So casually. Like she had been waiting for the perfect brunch to finally say what she really thought. As if inviting me was an act of charity and not a family obligation. As if I had no weight here. As if I never had. It was the first time I truly understood I was not one of them. I had been useful, present, quiet, convenient, but never one of them. By the time I started the engine, I wasn't sad. I wasn't even angry. I was done. Not the dramatic kind of done that needs slamming doors or shouting. Just the quiet, clear kind. The kind that knows exactly what it's walking away from and exactly what it's about to dismantle. And that was the last brunch I ever attended with my family. My name is Elena. I am 34 years old and I work as a freelance digital branding consultant. Most people assume that means I spend all day scrolling social media, but the truth is I build entire identities from scratch for people who are willing to pay for visibility. I used to work at a big agency downtown until a panic attack in a client meeting landed me in the hospital. I quit 2 weeks later. Since then, I've worked from home, kept a small circle of loyal clients, and paid every bill on my own. I live in a modest one-bedroom apartment, neat and organized the way I like things. My family doesn't understand my life. My mother thinks freelancing is just code for unemployed. My sister Claire once asked if I was like an influencer or something. My father never says much. He just nods and returns to whatever task he's buried in. Growing up, I learned not to expect applause from them. Or even acknowledgement. I was the older daughter, the fixer, the one who figured things out. My childhood was a string of responsibilities. When Claire was born, I was 6, and suddenly everything I did was too much or too loud or not helpful. I stopped trying to be seen and instead learned to be useful. I helped Claire with her homework. I learned how to cook when Mom started working nights. I drove Dad to physical therapy after his accident, even though I was only 17 and barely had my license. Later, I paid for part of Claire's college when she couldn't get enough aid. No one asked me to, but no one stopped me either. The unspoken rule in our house was that Elena handled it. She just did, without complaint, without thanks. It was easier that way. Mom never liked drama. Dad didn't tolerate confrontation. Claire? Well, Claire always managed to be at the center of things and somehow remain the victim. She was beautiful, emotional, and needed constant care. She always had a boyfriend crisis, or an academic breakdown, or a money issue. And every time she came undone, it was me who stepped in. I loaned her money. I helped her build her resume. I even let her crash at my place for 3 months when she got into a fight with Mom over her ex. Mom said I was enabling her. Dad said nothing. Claire said thanks, then left without cleaning a single dish. Despite all of that, I still hoped. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought maybe one day things would shift. That maybe after all the help, all the showing up, they'd see me not just as the responsible one, but as someone who mattered. That's why I went to brunch. That's why her words stung so deep. Not because they were new, but because they confirmed what I had spent years trying not to believe. That no matter what I did, I'd never be seen as part of them. I was the one they tolerated, the one they invited because it would look bad not to. I wasn't family, I was function, and once I saw it clearly, I couldn't unsee it. I wouldn't. I used to believe that if you kept showing up, kept giving, people would eventually appreciate it. That belief cost me years. My family never asked for my help outright, but they also never refused it. They operated in a strange space of expectation and denial where my contributions were never acknowledged but always counted on. When I was 22 and just starting my career, our childhood home had a plumbing disaster. My parents were short on cash. I offered to cover the repairs. My mom said, "You don't have to do that," but she handed me the invoice anyway. I paid. No one brought it up again. When my dad needed a new car for work but couldn't get approved for financing due to his credit, I co-signed the loan. Technically, I bought him that car. He drove it for 5 years. When Claire had her first panic attack in college and wanted to come home, I drove 6 hours to pick her up. I brought her back to my place, cooked her meals, helped her finish a paper that was past due. When she finally returned to school, she told everyone Mom had helped her through that hard time. I said nothing. I didn't want to seem petty. That silence became my language. I covered 1/3 of the down payment for the family's lakeside cabin. They needed it to close the deal. Mom promised I'd get partial ownership. A year later, when I asked to see the papers, she said, "Oh, we just put it under your father's name to simplify things." I didn't argue, but I kept the original wiring confirmation. I still have the receipt. Over time, I stopped expecting gratitude. It wasn't even about being thanked anymore. I just wanted them to notice that I was holding more than my share, that I wasn't just the background solution. I wanted to believe that maybe my role in the family was real, not just logistical. When Claire lost her job during the pandemic, I offered to help cover her rent for a few months. She said she'd pay me back. She never did. Instead, she posted pictures of new makeup hauls and weekend trips on Instagram. When I brought it up once, she said, "You're doing fine, why are you being weird about it?" So I dropped it. That was always the pattern. If I mentioned the imbalance, I was being dramatic. If I didn't, they acted like it was normal. And it wasn't just money, it was emotional bandwidth. I remembered birthdays. I organized family gifts. I checked in after hospital visits. When my Uncle Mark had heart surgery, I coordinated the food deliveries. My mom sent me a text that said, "Thanks for handling everything." That was the only time I ever heard those words. But the thing that stuck most was the cabin. The so-called family getaway that I had poured my savings into during my late 20s. They used it like it was theirs. 4th of July, barbecues, holiday weekends, even a few family friends had keys. When I brought coworkers there for a weekend retreat, my mom actually got upset. She said I should have asked the family first. I reminded her that I helped buy it. She said that was years ago. Things change. I remember staring at her thinking, so do people, so do boundaries. But I didn't push. I let it go. Because for so long, I was terrified that if I stopped giving, I'd disappear entirely. That the only reason I was tolerated at all was because I was useful. So I stayed useful. I paid the minimums on the shared family credit card when my parents couldn't. I renewed their Amazon Prime account when it expired. I transferred funds quietly every month to keep things going. I told myself that family was messy, that we didn't have to get along all the time, that maybe love looked different here. But deep down, I knew. I was the safety net, not the daughter, not the sister, the net, always catching, never caught. And the moment at brunch when my mom said those words, it shattered the last illusion I had. I realized I had been holding up a structure that never considered me a part of it. And once that realization set in, it became impossible to ignore. It burned through every memory, every transaction, every favor. It redefined everything. Suddenly, it all made sense, and I knew exactly what I needed to do next. Brunch had always been Mom's idea of tradition. Once a month, usually on a Sunday at one of the nicer places around the lake. She liked the aesthetics, the way the natural light hit the mimosas, the idea of it more than the meal itself. That day was no different. It was her birthday, and she had picked the spot. I almost didn't go. I had a deadline, a client waiting for a rebrand deck, but something in me still wanted to try. Maybe this brunch would be different. Maybe now, after everything I'd done lately, there'd be a shift. Maybe they'd treat me like I belonged. The place was picturesque, full of white chairs and soft jazz. I arrived 10 minutes early and waited at the table alone for 25 minutes. No one apologized for being late. No one asked how I'd been. They just sat down, ordered, and started talking about summer plans at the cabin. Mom was already coordinating who would bring what, how many people they could fit if the deck needed to be power washed again. I listened for 5 full minutes before I said, "Has anyone checked with me on the cabin dates?" Everyone looked confused. Claire blinked. Mom paused, then laughed. "We just assumed it'd be fine. You know, since you never use it. I use it when I can. I paid for the plumbing last fall." No one responded. They just moved on, talked about who could borrow the kayaks, whether the fire pit needed updating. And then, Mom looked right at me, sipped her mimosa, and said it. "We're just being nice, including you. Don't think you matter." The words were too casual, too light, like she'd rehearsed them in her mind for months and was finally letting them out. There was no buildup, no apology, just an open palm slap to the identity I'd been holding on to. The table stayed quiet for a few seconds, then Uncle Mark chuckled and muttered, "Ouch!" Claire smirked. Dad cut into his eggs. I looked at each of them. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. Maybe someone to say, "That was harsh," or even, "That's not fair." But no one said anything. Not one person flinched. Not one reached across the table. I stared at my coffee. I didn't feel tears or rage. I felt a kind of stillness, the kind that comes right before a clean break. I took one sip, stood up, grabbed my bag. I said, "I'll get the check for myself." "Don't worry." No one tried to stop me. I walked past the hostess, past the birthday balloons, past the lake view. The sun outside was sharp. I sat in my car for a long minute and let the silence fill the space around me. My phone buzzed once with a client reminder. I silenced it. I thought about every moment that had led to this one, every ignored favor, every unreturned text, every time they had needed something and I had shown up. I realized in that moment that nothing I ever did would be enough to make them see me differently. Not because I hadn't earned it, but because they had decided who I was a long time ago, and changing that story would require them to admit they were wrong. They weren't going to do that. Ever. I started the engine, pulled out slowly, and drove home in silence. No music, no calls. Just me and the buzzing thought that kept growing louder by the mile. I didn't owe them anything. Not my time, not my money, not my loyalty, not anymore. They had made it clear. I didn't matter, and I was about to show them what it looked like when the person who didn't matter walked away for good. The first thing I did when I got home was open my laptop and pull up the real estate platform I use for work. The draft listing for the cabin had been sitting in my account for months, fully written with updated photos and estimated value. I had created it back in February during a particularly bad argument with Claire just in case. Now, it wasn't just a backup plan, it was my first move. I reviewed the listing once hit publish and shut the laptop. Within 48 hours, I had 3 offers. On the 5th day, I accepted a full cash offer, no counter. Just like that, the family cabin wasn't the family's anymore. I didn't send a message. I didn't warn them. I just waited. Next, I opened the online banking app and closed the shared credit line I had opened for my parents when they needed a new washer and dryer. For the last 6 months, I'd been paying the minimums quietly. They had forgotten it existed, but it was under my name, my credit. I shut it down. The auto payments stopped. The account froze. Then I turned to the Amazon household account. They had been using my Prime subscription each with their own logins, acting like it was theirs. I flagged the activity, reported it for irregular use, and requested the household account be terminated. I revoked their access to streaming delivery and every list they had ever saved. It didn't take long. That evening, the group chat started buzzing. Claire asked why her Prime wasn't working. My mom sent 3 question marks. My uncle chimed in asking what happened to the calendar dates for the cabin. No one mentioned brunch. No one asked if I was okay. Just confusion and minor irritation, like they were dealing with technical glitches. Then came the call, a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring twice before answering. It was a lawyer. She introduced herself as representing my parents in ongoing family matters. She was calm, polite, but firm. My father, she said, was requesting the return of the vehicle I had gifted him 2 years ago. He planned to transfer the title to a colleague. I asked when and where. She paused, probably expecting resistance. I gave her a time. The next day at 1 o'clock, their address. I cleaned out the car that night, took my charger, the spare sunglasses, and a notebook I had left in the glove compartment. The act felt sterile, not emotional, just necessary. I arrived exactly on time, parked in the same driveway I used to shovel in the winters as a teenager. Rang the doorbell once. My mother answered. Behind her was my father, arms crossed, face unreadable. Claire sat on the couch, pretending to scroll her phone, wearing the sweater I had bought her for Christmas last year. I held out the keys, said I was here to return the car. My mom didn't take them. She stared at me and said we needed to talk, that things had gotten out of control, that families don't behave this way. Her voice shifted from sharp to soft to pleading. I told her I wasn't angry. I was done. That I wouldn't continue playing along with their version of reality. That I wouldn't keep giving while being treated like I didn't belong. Claire stood, then voice rising, accusing me of taking everything personally, of being dramatic, of twisting what Mom said. She said I was abandoning them over one comment at brunch. I didn't respond. I placed the keys on the porch railing, turned, and walked down the steps. My mom called my name once. My father said nothing. I ordered a taxi and sat in the back, staring out the window at the street I had known my whole life. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel relief. Just clarity. That night, I logged into my bank and canceled the recurring $800 transfer I had been sending Claire every month for her rent. She lost her job in February, said she needed a few months of help. I didn't ask questions. I just sent the money. She had bought a designer purse 2 weeks later, posted it on Instagram with a caption about spoiling yourself. I should have stopped then. I didn't. I kept paying. March, April, May. June was already scheduled. I canceled it. The next morning brought a flood. Missed calls, voicemails. Claire swinging between panic, guilt, and rage. She said she would be evicted, said I was punishing her for something she didn't even do, said I was cruel. I didn't reply. By afternoon, the group chat had turned into chaos, accusations, confusion. My uncle sent one of his vague statements about family unity. My mom wrote a long message about how communication is the key to healing. Still, no one apologized. Still, no one acknowledged anything. I didn't respond. I just watched. And then, just before sunrise the next day, my dad sent a single message to the group chat. It said, "If this behavior doesn't stop, everyone who doesn't live here will no longer be welcome in this house." One sentence, no emojis, no explanation. Silence followed. Claire responded with confusion. "Wait, would I live there now?" No answer. My mom tried again, writing another long paragraph about healing, suggesting my dad didn't mean what he said. But everyone knew he had. The man who never spoke had finally drawn a line, and for the first time, I believed he meant it. After my dad's message, the group chat went dead. Not quiet, not slow, just abruptly, completely silent. No replies, no side comments, no peace offerings. For 3 days, not a single notification came through. It was the first time in years that my phone didn't feel like a loaded weapon in my pocket. I still checked it out of habit, expecting the usual barrage, but there was nothing. I went on with my life, worked, walked, slept, ate real food that I cooked for myself. I breathed in a way I hadn't realized I had stopped doing. And then on the 4th day, a message arrived. It was from Claire, a voicemail. Her tone was soft, like she was carefully balancing on a ledge. She said she wanted to talk, that things had gotten out of hand, that Dad's message had shaken everyone. She said Mom was walking on eggshells around the house. Then she shifted. Said she knew I had canceled the rent and asked if I could just cover July just one more time. Said she promised to figure it out after that. I didn't call back. That night she sent a text. It said, "So you're seriously just going to leave me screwed over because of a brunch comment? Grow up." I didn't reply to that either. The next morning, a cousin messaged me privately asking what was going on. My uncle sent a voice note saying I was being cold and hurting the family. My mom sent a long paragraph about forgiveness. I didn't read it. The preview in the notification was enough. It started with, "You're not the only one who's ever felt hurt." But the message that hit hardest came later that night, from Claire again. She said, "They're talking about making me leave. Dad won't speak to me. Are you okay watching that happen?" It was desperate, but it wasn't honest. There was no apology, no acknowledgement, just expectation. Still assuming I'd step in. Still assuming I'd rescue her. 2 days later, a ping came from an old family thread I had forgotten to mute. One message. From Dad. "I told you all to stop. If you keep pushing, you won't have this house." Nothing after that. No replies. Not even from Claire. Another silence settled in. This time, longer. Heavier. Everyone felt the shift. Even my mom went quiet. For once, no one was pushing passive-aggressive memes about family unity. No one was forwarding recipes. It was as if the network had collapsed. The house of cards was falling, and everyone was frozen watching it. I didn't reach out. I didn't monitor the fallout. I just lived. I took long walks. I went to the gym. I worked through my client load faster than I had in months. I even started volunteering at the local shelter, something I had told myself I'd do once things settled, never realizing it was the chaos at home that kept me from having space to care. Then, out of nowhere, I received a letter. A physical one. No return address. But I knew the handwriting. My father. Inside was a single piece of paper. It said, "Elena, you were right to leave. I stayed quiet too long. I let things go too far. You don't owe anyone anything. You never did. Whatever peace you've found, keep it. Dad." No guilt. No begging. Just a recognition I had waited decades to receive. I read it 3 times, then folded it and placed it in the small wooden box on my bookshelf where I kept pieces of myself I never wanted to lose again. After that, everything seemed to click. I got a call from my manager. A project I'd led had saved the company more than expected. They were promoting me, more control, better hours, a quiet vindication. I accepted. Then I booked a solo trip. 2 weeks, a small cabin outside Flagstaff, trees, sky, no neighbors. I rented a car, packed light, left my phone on silent. No itinerary. No one knew where I was. That was the point. The silence was jarring at first, like something was missing. But over time I realized nothing was missing, nothing that mattered. I didn't miss the guilt. I didn't miss the emotional whiplash. I didn't miss the performance. On my final night at the cabin, I sat outside with a blanket and a cup of tea and watched the stars. I thought about the brunch, the cabin sale, the car, the rent, the voicemail, the post, the eviction, all of it. And for the first time, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt done. Not in the dramatic sense. Not like I was making a point. Just truly calmly done. They still exist. They still talk. I'm sure there are theories, gossip, maybe even regret. But I don't care. I don't check. Because walking away wasn't a reaction. It was a decision. A slow one. A steady one. A clear one. And once you make it, you don't go back. 2 weeks after returning from the cabin, I unpacked my bag and placed every item exactly where it belonged. There was a new stillness in my apartment. Not the kind of silence that feels empty or lonely, but the kind that feels earned. Like standing in a room that used to echo with chaos, and finally hearing your own breath again. I didn't tell anyone where I had been. Not one message to the family, not even a vague update on social media. The group chat remained silent. No birthday reminders, no discount codes, no check-ins disguised as control. Claire hadn't tried to contact me since her last outburst. My mom hadn't sent a forwarded article in days. My uncle's usual peacekeeping texts had vanished. Even the extended family threads had gone quiet, as if everyone had agreed not to say the wrong thing and risk becoming the next target. I should have felt uneasy. I didn't. I felt like I had stepped out of a fog. I started sleeping, not just lying in bed with eyes closed, but actual deep rest. I woke up clear. I cooked again. I went to the grocery store and picked things not for convenience but for pleasure. Fresh herbs, colorful vegetables, real bread. I signed up for a local pottery class I had bookmarked months ago. I cleaned out my inbox. I unfollowed people I didn't want to see anymore. I read a book cover to cover without my phone next to me. And the weight, the constant invisible pressure of wondering when the next obligation or guilt trip would land lifted. Work got easier. Clients responded to my clarity. I hit deadlines without stress. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was splitting myself in pieces to hold up other people's lives. I was whole. Some part of me expected a final confrontation, a door knock, a dramatic phone call, but it never came. They didn't reach out. I didn't either. And that absence stopped feeling like punishment and started feeling like protection. I had always been the one to chase to fix to keep things stitched together. But now I let it unravel. I let what was broken stay broken. I let silence answer questions I no longer felt obligated to ask. I didn't announce anything. I didn't post a goodbye. I simply reclaimed my life one quiet morning at a time. There is a different kind of freedom that comes when you realize no one is watching you anymore. When your choices are truly your own, not filtered through expectations. And in that freedom, I found something unexpected. Joy. Not loud, not performative. Just quiet joy. In my space. In my solitude. In the way the sunlight hit the floor around 10:30 each morning. In the sound of water boiling for tea. In my own voice, unfiltered and free. I had left a family, but I had returned to myself, and I was finally home.